Hi, so on the 12th of November 2025, I put a post on the subject of electrical sensitivity and how the symptoms of such sensitivity have been reclassified as mental disorders and millions of people put on psychiatric drugs when in fact they are suffering from electrical sensitivity. So unexpectedly, I didn't think there would be great interest in that topic, but I felt it was important. But there was great interest, and I thought that it would serve a good purpose to also discuss the subject of autism, because this is quite a topic currently. And I just wanted to give you some information in the same way I gave information about electrical sensitivity, so that you have a chance to go and research for yourself and hopefully get questions answered to your own satisfaction on a line of truth, not what perhaps you have been told or been given. And most importantly also, there's loads of, actually I've got so many books here for this post. I was pressed into doing this post today because yesterday this came through my letterbox. So this is a December issue of What Doctors Don't Tell You, and I subscribe to that publication, which has been going for about 30 years, and it publishes it publishes medical studies or topics which are coming out in medical studies which the mainstream media will not discuss. So you can imagine what sort of topics are in that magazine, and that's why it's called What Doctors Don't Tell You. But the very, very important, what I consider a very important article, study has come out, and I'm not going to read it for the purpose of algorithms. I'm going to let you read it. So that's why I'm just not repeating that, purely because of the TikTok algorithms. But I felt this is really something which has to be discussed, and I will read you what I've highlighted, and I will give you plenty of references so you can just go and research, and hopefully it will be to your satisfaction, or at least you will get onto the line of truth, which is the most important. So firstly, the word autism. So the word autism actually was coined by a guy called Eugen Bleuler, who was a Swiss psychiatrist. And it was coined in 1911 when the man was dealing with schizophrenic. So this word is really related originally to severe schizophrenia, and it comes from the Greek auto, as in self, and the man coined that term to refer to people who were stuck and looking into themselves. So that's where the word autism came from. However, in 1943, apparently a chap called Leo Kanner, so he was an Austrian-American psychiatrist, apparently the father of child psychiatry in America, apparently, and he changed the use of the word to be used for infantile autism, to be used for children, and the word changed. So whether he used it with the intention of using it for schizophrenic children, if there is such a thing, which obviously there isn't, but that's what happened. Now, it's hard to find the exact sources, but apparently he wrote a paper at that time on that subject discussing 11 children. Apparently it was a landmark paper just discussing 11 cases. How can that be a landmark paper? I'm not too sure on such a small population or trials group. But anyway, that's what I could find. You can go and look a bit more. And I do want to point out that book again that you can find on Internet Archive. That Bleuler, this Swiss psychiatrist, was very much in with Freud as well as Carl Jung. And the three of them went on to set up, with another chap called S. Ferenczi, they went to found the International Psychoanalytic Association in 1910. So this is some information for you. Now, what has happened with the word autism? So you see in all my old dictionaries here, because it was coined in 1911, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s dictionary, the word just doesn't appear. So it's taken quite some time to make it in the dictionaries. So here I have a 1976 Webster's New World Dictionary. Okay, right. And I've got the word here, and this is what it says here. It is in a dictionary, and it says it's an Americanism, actually. very specifically says that it's an Americanism. And it says psychology, a state of mind characterized by daydreaming, hallucinations, and disregard of external reality. Okay, that's the definition there. Then here I have a 2000 in Carter Dictionary from Bloomsbury. And you look at the definition here, and it says a disturbance in psychological development in which use of language, reaction to stimuli, interpretation of the world, and the formation of relationships are not fully established and follow unusual patterns. Okay, and then there is another dictionary there which I looked at, the Webster's unabridged dictionary, and the definition is slightly different. So here we go and see the typical, the epitome of psychiatric diagnosis, where because it cannot be tested medically and it's fabricated and invented, there are differences in definitions. There is no certainty. And it gets worse because the word only appeared, autism as a disorder, only appeared in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM-3, in 1980. Now, for those who watched my post already, this is the Psychiatric Bible. This is the book which is used for insurance purposes and for the multi-billion dollars or multi-billion pounds industry, psychiatric industry, for the drugging of 280 million people around the world, and so on and so forth. None of the disorders in there, of the over 300 disorders, can be tested medically. None of them. So, and all of them are voted into existence in committees. So we open the book here at autistic disorder. So made it in there. And just to give you just a glimpse of what there is here, it gives examples. For example, does not wave bye-bye, does not copy mother's domestic activities, does not actively participate in simple games, prefers solitary play activities, no interest in making peer friendships, absence of imaginative activities such as play acting of adult roles, fantasy, lack of interest in stories about imaginary events. Now, I'm just going to play devil's advocate very slightly here, but can we just appreciate the fact that there may be people or children who are not interested in stories about imaginary events and or who want to be on their own, in their own peace and quiet. I'm just saying, you know, on the other side. So who has the authority, or could you call it authority? Who can say in this planet, in this world, what is acceptable or not acceptable communication-wise? Do you see what I'm saying? Who dictates, who has the right to dictate how a child should behave, how many friends he should have, should he speak to that person? Do you see the complete control that I'm talking about? And as I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Now, in 2013, we have the DSM-5. There's a more recent reissue of the DSM-5 in 2022, but it's still DSM-5. Now, all this DSM, you can download free PDF online. And I really, really recommend that you literally go and download and look for yourself. So you just put DSM-3, DSM-4, DSM-5, whichever, what DSM-5 is the latest copy. But if you want to compare, put DSM-5 PDF, DSM-3 PDF. You've got them on a fantastic website called Mad in America, which exposes psychiatry, madinamerica.com, and you can download them there. But I really, really recommend that you just look for yourself with your own eyes and read the pseudoscience in those books, because anybody with any sort of common sense and a goodwill towards their fellow human beings immediately sees the fallacy of the content in those books. It is couched, the language is couched in scientific language. It's pseudoscientific. When you actually read it properly and look at it, it's just made up nomenclature and terminology. And I always find that when I read those books, looking for information for this post, I always get myself really worked up, because I find it extraordinary that we're in the 21st century. And when you look at the content of these books, it's so primitive, it's so backwards, that the idea that we're really ahead, you know, as a civilization, just shatters. Because frankly, we're not. Yes, we've got electronics and digital camera and we can control everybody. But apart from that, the culture, the intelligence, everything else is just gone down the pan at the moment. But anyway, I digress. I just want to show you something here. And, oh, I've lost it. Okay, you can go on DSM-5 and you will see that now it's called autistic spectrum disorder. So now they've laid it out as a full spectrum. So a wide range where this topic of autism can be abused. So, you know, here a child doesn't want to say bye-bye or other things like that. So you can basically start putting so many children in that category of autistic. Now, I'm not denying the fact, or I'm not disputing the fact that there are children with very strong difficulties who need round-the-clock care, and which comes under this heading of autism. But I'm very mindful that you have children that are probably completely fine, and because they've got little oddities or peculiarities in their behavior, they are promptly placed under that heading. And this is very dangerous. But this is typical of psychiatry, you see, because don't forget that in this book, as I explained before, you can put the entire humankind with a disorder. It's quite interesting how psychiatrists don't label themselves with any of the disorders in there, but I can tell you what, I could label any of them using their own disorders. But the point is, the human condition in there is labeled as a mental disorder. So being human is labeled as a mental disorder. Now, let's go on to this, because I'm mindful of the time. And I want to, as I said, I'm going to put the article so you can read it. But I want to make a point here. America has the world's highest rate of autism, affecting 1 in 31 children. That's 3.5%. The average rate worldwide is 1 in 127, according to the WHO. And the US also has the most aggressive vaccine schedule with 54 shots and boosters on offer. A 1-year-old American child whose parents follow the schedule will have been given 25 vaccines. 1 year old. Now, this is really, really vital. According to the review, the tipping point happened in 1986, when the US passed the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, which granted blanket liability protection to vaccine manufacturers if their products cause injury or even death. In that year, there were just 12 shots on the pediatric vaccine schedule. So after that, 1986, now here's a stat. In 1970, just 1 in 10,000 American children was diagnosed with autism. But by 2000, this had risen to 1 in 150 children. And today, 1 in 31-year-old children is affected. Of these, 27% have profound autism. So I think that's the one that's telling you about that they need, complete care, including loss of the ability to speak or interact with the world, and will need lifetime care. The increase is also reflected in the need for special education services. I mean, that was shocking, though I'm going to read you here. In 2000, just 15,556 American children were receiving teaching assistance. But by 2011, 11 years later, this had increased to 406,957 children, a 25-fold rise. So that was 2011, and in 2026, shortly, in a couple of days. So 15 years later, we can expect that it's going to be a lot more than 406,000 children. I mean, the stats are staggering. And here we have a situation, and now I'm going to go there at the end of the post, but here it does say pharmaceuticals, either the painkillers women take during pregnancy or the vaccines we give our children, are the likeliest principal driver of the autism epidemic, which has seen rates explode by 32,000% in the US in the last 50 years. And that's what this review is about. And the rest of the article discusses all that in detail. So imagine, if you keep in mind what I've read you in some other post, I showed you some of the side effects from the actual manufacturer's data sheet of antidepressants. And many of the side effects are quite destructive to the unborn child. And a pregnant woman, it's not recommended for pregnant women, except when the doctor says, oh, well, it's better, it'll be fine. If you remember can't remember the exact quote. But basically, it leaves the door open that doctors can prescribe to pregnant women those very destructive antidepressants and other psychiatric drugs. But the point is, it completely damages the unborn child. Then you have those mothers taking stuff whilst they're breastfeeding. So you have a situation really where, and then you have the children getting vaccinated. So you have, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, there are English words for that. I just can't think of them right now. But you've got this dire condition where the poor child that comes into the world, many of them are already drugged before they're even born. And by the time they're born, if they're not drugged, then within the first year or second 2 years of their life, they will be, well, not only affected by any vaccination, but they will also be affected by environmental factors, poisons in the food. I mean, it is so, you know, such a huge assault on a young body. No wonder that, you know, many of them just cave in. So I think there are many factors to consider, but I thought that this is of a great importance, really, because the stats speaks for themselves and the timeline speaks for itself as well, whereby in 1980 we have a lot more appearing in this on autistic, on autism, and then through time, by 2013, it's called autistic spectrum disorder, now a much wider range. That fits in with the time of all this happening. 1986 was the Act, the American Act, and from the 1980s, it began a decline. And it does say here, which I didn't read, it says, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, the U.S. Health Monitoring Agency, the incidence of autism has consistently risen every year, starting in the mid-1980s. So I will let you think what you will of it. I will put the references on the description and the article at the end of this post. But I would really recommend, if you're involved in this or you have any family members that is having to deal with with such a situation, then, you know, do your research, really.